The Miami Heat have managed to advance to the finals for the second time in the last 5 years, being the first 8th seed to make the finals since 1999 and the first ever 8th seed to make the finals in a non-lockout season. Coach Erik Spoelstra has made a pretty compelling and, to me, borderline undeniable case that he is the best coach in the NBA right now, and the tactics that they used in this series managed to stave off the Celtics, who themselves were trying to make history as the first team ever to come back from a 3-0 series deficit. Before we take too much of a look at the series as a whole, we can't talk about what the Heat did to close out this series without talking about Caleb Martin going off in Game 7 to help them get there. If you watch his first 4 made field goals, they're pretty standard for what you'd expect from Martin, who has largely been considered a role player for most of his career until this playoff run. But then in the second quarter, we'd start to see why he's been shedding that quote-unquote role player label over the course of this postseason. He'd attack Al Horford off the catch, driving baseline before hitting him with the snatchback, pulling Al back out of the paint before driving back up the middle, stopping and hitting him with the pump fake, and then using this really nice footwork to generate some space so that he can knock down the fadeaway jumper. He'd start to begin somewhat of a takeover of the game with his scoring. He was abusing Boston's lapses in defensive coverage, and this play that the Heat ran worked really well to get him in a position to do so. It involves Jimmy driving to the paint, and Bam is going to set this weak side down screen for Martin to get the kick from Jimmy. The Celtics are in a weird defensive situation here because Tatum is trying to get around the screen. Rob is pointing for someone to pick up Jimmy when he starts to move to the corner. And amidst all the confusion, Martin is just going to dribble right into an open mid-range jumper. I think something that's really special about Caleb Martin is the fact that he does a great job of creating for himself in opportunities that are derived from his off-ball play. He makes this baseline cut so that he can be open in the corner, and he gets White to bite on the pump fake before driving. Rob Williams is going to show in front of him on the help, and it gives White some time to recover, but Martin's going to use this really nice turnaround to drill the fadeaway jumper. What he was doing in largely off-the-catch opportunities showcases something that I think is really important for teams to start to understand more about scoring. You don't need to dribble the air out of the ball to score 20+ points. A player can do so much damage simply by attacking closeouts and playing primarily off the catch. Shot creation doesn't always mean isolation or being the pick and roll ball handler. You can actually do a lot of creation for yourself in off-ball contexts, and that's something that Miami seems to have a really good understanding of. His scoring over the course of this entire series was otherworldly, and honestly, a lot of it's probably not sustainable. He shot 72% at the rim, 72% from mid-range, 50% on corner threes, and 48% on non-corner threes. And yeah, while that might not be sustainable, he was putting himself in those positions to be able to get those good looks. And a lot of those shots were high-quality shots. It wasn't like he was just getting lucky and making these difficult contested shots. One of the key adjustments for the Heat on the defensive end was the fact that they chose to switch Boston's pick and rolls, and it virtually shut down their ability to score anytime they were trying to come out of that action. Brown would get switches onto Bam, but Bam is one of the few bigs in the NBA that's able to hold his own against guards, and Jalen just couldn't figure out what to do against him. Smart initiating this handoff should, in theory, get Brown some room to get downhill to attack the basket, but Bam makes the switch onto him, and Bam keeps Brown in front of him, forcing him into the help from Lowry, and he manages to get a good contest on the shot to force the miss. Boston had one method for beating the switch that we'd seen in prior games, and it involved the roll man ghosting the screen so that the player with the ball can split the defenders with the pass to get the roller into open space in the paint, but the Heat managed to shut that down by having Jimmy preemptively guard that ghost screen, and it shut down those potential entry passes. With Boston basically incapable of scoring against the switch, a huge staple of their offense was consistently denied throughout the night, and they had to try and figure out other ways to score. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this series as a whole and kind of what it means for the NBA, seeing that an 8th seed was able to make a postseason run like this. Every time there's a team that has any sort of Cinderella type of playoff run where they're defying the expectations that people had of them, there's going to be 29 other general managers in the NBA looking at that team and thinking, what did they do right that allowed them to accomplish something like this? I guarantee you that pretty much every other team is watching the Miami Heat right now and trying to figure out what they can take away from their success to apply towards their own roster, whether it be something philosophically, something related to team construction, whatever the case may be. But the thing is, what the Heat are doing isn't something that's going to be able to be replicated overnight, because the Heat have a few very important pieces of the puzzle that other teams don't have. Jimmy Butler, Erik Spoelstra, and the ability to locate, evaluate, and integrate talent that other teams aren't able to make use of. Let's talk about that last piece of things that I mentioned. Looking up and down Miami's roster, you've obviously got guys like Jimmy and Bam, and even Kyle Lowry and Kevin Love. All of these guys have established themselves as reliable NBA players, capable of contributing at a high level. But then you start to look a little deeper at the roster, and you see some lesser known names, guys who were significantly less known prior to joining the Heat. Max Strus, undrafted. Duncan Robinson, undrafted. Gabe Vincent, undrafted. Caleb Martin, undrafted. How were the Heat able to take these 4 guys who went undrafted and turn them into valuable pieces for a team that's about to head to the NBA Finals? Part of it speaks to the abilities of the players themselves, the fact that they're willing to do whatever it takes to find a spot in the league where they can stick. But another part of it is the fact that Erik Spoelstra makes sure that he can put them in positions to succeed in the first place. We can see how Erik Spoelstra was accomplishing this by taking a look at how he's used Duncan Robinson. The Celtics play their bigs in drop coverage a lot of the time, so one of the hurdles for the Heat going into this series was how are they going to be able to beat that drop coverage, and this is where a guy like Duncan Robinson comes into play. Duncan Robinson only played in 42 regular season games this past season. He didn't shoot very well, he didn't get a ton of playing time, but Erik Spoelstra recognized that there was this specific problem that the Heat had to be able to handle, and Duncan Robinson was the right tool for that job. On this possession, they've got Bam Adebayo matched up against Al Horford, and Jimmy's going to set the screen for Duncan Robinson to come up and get the ball from Bam, and then now they're going to be able to get into a pick and roll. Al Horford's in drop coverage, so it's going to be really easy for Duncan Robinson to just come off of that screen and pull the three-pointer and knock it down. On this possession, Duncan Robinson's going to make it look like he's setting this back screen on Brogdon so that Vincent can make the backdoor cut, but instead he's going to fake and come up to get the handoff from Bam, but it's actually defended pretty well by Derek White. Now regardless, look at where Robert Williams is located. He's sitting directly at the nail, not pulled up to the three-point line at all. So Duncan Robinson is going to be able to drive Derek White right into Bam, and he is completely wide open to get that three-point shot off because Robert Williams just doesn't have enough time at all to come up and contest it. In Game 3, one thing that was happening was the Celtics were basically forbidding Jimmy Butler to get a good look in the paint. They didn't even want him to get down there to begin with. And so we can kind of see that this was creating a problem for Miami's offense. Jimmy was having to settle for a floater like this one. It was just a lot harder for him to get down there and get open shots. So the Heat are going to quickly counter that by instead just spacing everybody out, letting Jimmy drive. And Tatum and Brown, they're both camped out more towards the paint. White and Smart are both doubling Jimmy down there. Horford is staying on Bam near the dunker spot, so there's no dump off opportunity. And so Jimmy gets down to the paint, he stops. Smart's going to swipe the ball away, but Tatum collapses into the paint a little bit, and this is going to leave Martin open in the corner. So now Jimmy's able to just sling it out there, and Martin gets an open look from 3. Jimmy's going to take Robert Williams off the dribble, and White's going to dig a little bit at the dunker spot down low. And once he does this, Jimmy's going to sling it out to Vincent, and then Vincent cashes in on the catch and shoot opportunity. Let's take a look at another adjustment that Erik Spoelstra made in Game 3 that shows just how much trust he has in his players. So the Celtics are going to run this action where Horford's going to set this screen on Vincent. Jaylen Brown's going to come up, make it look like he's going to get the pass from Smart, but he's actually going to cut up the middle, and that leaves Horford open for the pass above the break. And Kevin Love is hanging out a little bit too low. He's kind of at the nail. And so Horford's going to have plenty of time to just pull the shot. Love can't really close out quick enough. This prompted Erik Spoelstra to take Kevin Love out of the game, and he's going to put in Caleb Martin. Now, 4 minutes after that possession, when Caleb Martin's in the game, the Celtics are running in transition. Brogdon's going to drive baseline, Caleb Martin calls out to Max Strus to make that rotation, provide the help down low, and Brogdon's going to kick it out to Horford. Now, on that last possession I showed you, Kevin Love gave up that 3 for Horford, but Caleb Martin's already hanging out closer above the break to where Horford's at. So he's going to be able to make sure that Horford doesn't get a shot, jump the passing lane, and then recover to force Jaylen Brown up the middle, where he's going to run into a bunch of help, and the Heat are going to be able to prevent him from getting the layup. Every team in the league should be looking at the Heat, trying to figure out what they can take away from what they're doing to learn how to be a better run organization. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a scouting department that's able to find these diamonds in the rough and develop them, and if you don't have a coach that can actually figure out how to use them the right way, then none of this really matters. Huge thank you to all of my patrons for helping make these videos possible. If you enjoyed the video and you want to see more like this, be sure to subscribe and leave a like. That's the easiest way to support me and help me continue making content. If you want to help support the channel further, you can click the link in the description to become a patron. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.